I'm going to say a few words about the film Tilbury that I made in 1987 at the Icelandic National Television, and a few years before I had read a short story by writer Þórarinn Eldjárn, whom I knew from school, and I found this short story very interesting because it combined one of the most important events in the history of Iceland, the British occupation and the Allies' occupation of Iceland during World War II. It combined that historical event with mythology, with an Icelandic folk tale about Tilbury. And the word Tilbury sounds a bit like the English name Tilbury, which makes this a kind of a wordplay on behalf of writer Eldjárn. And I've always found it interesting to mix different genres. In this case, a war film and a fantasy film or a horror film. And I even put a song and dance number in this one as well to make it a bit like a musical comedy when you least expect it. But anyway, I had always been very interested in the Icelandic legends, just like Þórarinn Eldjárn had been. As kids, we read it during the long and dark winters here in Iceland, and I think most of Icelanders are quite interested in the supernatural and in fantasy, whatever their religion is, because when you live in a country, big country where there are very few people and very strange landscapes, you sort of wonder what's out there in the dark. Iceland had been a very isolated country up to World War II. World War I had passed us by, and there were a lot of people who thought that the same thing would happen in World War II, but times had changed, and Iceland had gathered, because of its location in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean, had gathered a strategic importance. Both the Allies and the Germans wanted to occupy Iceland because of this location. It was a sort of an aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean. And when the Germans took Norway and Denmark, the English decided to be the first to take Iceland. And this came as a shock to the Icelanders, because they thought, for them, war has always been something that happened abroad, at least war in recent times. Of course, in the ancient times there had been Vikings and stuff. So this caused Iceland had been one of the poorest countries in Europe, but suddenly there was prosperity because of the army that brought a lot of work, and people that lived in the country went to Reykjavik to get to work for the British, and then there was all kinds of things associated with modern times, like entertainment, and of course, when you have 30,000 soldiers in a country, Reykjavik at the time was not much bigger than that. That sort of was a problem for Icelandic men who felt threatened, because they had a lot of competition from the soldiers, and the Icelandic girls suddenly discovered that they were in no way subordinated to the Icelandic men, and some of them found the British soldiers much more charming than the Icelanders. This explains a bit the point of view of the main character in the film, who comes from the country and who is flabbergasted by what he sees in Reykjavik. And then he starts thinking about this old tale of the Tilbury. And what was a Tilbury? If you want to know the details, there is a nice Wikipedia page that where you can look it up. But anyway, Tilbury, the first time we hear in the folk tales about the Tilbury was during the 17th century. And this was a sort of a creature that made by women to steal milk from the neighbors. And from the milk they made butter. Why butter, you might ask? All this sounds a bit ridiculous, but at the time butter was used as a currency in Iceland, and people kept butter for years. And rich people had butter mountains. They gathered a lot of butter and they kept it, and the poor people who had to pay the landowners a rent, they paid in butter. And so this is not as far-fetched as it may seem, but the Tilbury butter was, of course, since it came in fact from the devil, was something that you wouldn't eat if you knew what it was. And anyway, as shown in the film, for many Icelanders, the foreign soldiers were very strange. They behaved nearly like they came from the legends. They were uncanny or unheimlich, and so you have this fantasy about a British officer who in reality is a Tilbury. Anyway, this film, when I made it in 1987, and nobody talked about folk horror. And Iceland was not considered to be a cool country. This was before Björk and Sigur Rós. Of course, I wanted it to be shown abroad, and it was presented at some screenings, but people found it very mysterious. Its time had not come, and I didn't think it would ever come until certainly many years later. I was contacted by Kila Janis and Severin Films, who wanted to put this film in their folk horror collection. And of course, I'm very happy that more people are going to see it, and who knows, since you have a lot of people in Canada and around Winnipeg from Icelandic origin, maybe they could honor their ancestry by making Tilbury butter.